Hello everybody! I'm in a little bit early tonight and kind of here by myself, so it's easy for me to kind of speak up and move about. But I'm feeling a little under the weather. Maybe I'll be over it by the time this posts, or probably by the time I even get around to looking at more than one thing. Basically, I figured I'd take a moment before I relax for a bit and use the randomizer and start putting together a random records video. And the result is that you're going to see the extent of the weirdness of my tastes, as in how far leaning and how extreme, as in extremely different they can be, and extreme. So the first record that I've got is probably not what you would expect from me. It actually grabbed something from the 78s. This is a pretty clean sounding Bluebird Victor press. It's from 1939. It's Cherokee on one side, Charlie Barnett and his orchestra, and Stay Up Stan, the all-night record man, on the flip side. Stay Up Stan is a vocal track. It has vocals by Judy Ellington and Charlie Barnett. My impression of the record is basically that it's what would be expected of 1939 big band. It's a foxtrot on both sides. The thing that's kind of interesting about it is the A side, Cherokee. For one thing, don't expect that it's going to be any attempt at sort of exotic or trying to sound Native American in any way. It is not. It is a regular sort of jazz piece. And while most of the swing bands and big bands at this time were doing things that were very much geared towards brass being the lead, Charlie Barnett was a saxophone maestro, so it's saxophone lead on this. And the A side is an instrumental work that focuses on that. It's not, to me, as exciting as the B side. The B side, even though it's a vocal track, it doesn't focus on the vocals so much as it does kicking in that instrumentation. And the sax solos on this side are absolutely outrageous. It's a really slamming, awesome, super cool single for the time. And, you know, keep in mind, 1939, so if you're expecting something that's going to rock out, it's not that kind of thing, and it's not fusion-y or anything like that. It's just really good, it's really technical, and there's a bit of speed and spice in that saxophone lead, especially on the B side. Moving on, the randomizer picked a CD on the second pull, and I'm going to put a little disclaimer here before showing this. Don't think I'm into anything weird, because I'm not. Far from it. Honestly, I can't take this stuff seriously, is one of the reasons why I can enjoy it. You know, from a musical perspective, I can see the directions that this next thing I'm going to show you has kind of evolved through, and now it's really extraordinary, some of the stuff that comes out. But this is old school, this is roots, and honestly there was a lot of negative things that happened in the scene from the period of this disc, but it's got some outrageous artwork and probably some outrageous concepts in whatever lyrical content is there, which I can't understand a word of. Is probably beneficial. So that said, I like everything that's kind of macabre and weird, and again, I just can't take this stuff seriously. So what we have next is 3, 2, 1, or should I have done a drum roll? I don't know. Anyway, here it is. Micro budget record Lunacy from Abigor, Nachthemnen. This is old school black metal, you know, typical album art with skinny young guys in corpse paint wandering around trying to look as spooky as is possible. Even the face of the CD itself is as outrageous as it can get. And, you know, I'm not even sure which way on this thing is right side up, honestly. It's everything that you would expect from the genre from that period. The recording quality is very mid-range and tin horn. You barely can detect that there's any bass presence in it at all. There's more bottom end coming out of synthesizers than anything else. So mostly what you hear, it seems, is hi-hat and tremolo picked guitars really quick, just kind of thing throughout. But it's very moody and very atmospheric, and there are different techniques of doing the sort of vocals that usually go with this sort of thing. A lot of people just do straight what they call a fry vocal, which doesn't even require your vocal cords. You just kind of go like, and you're not even using your voice there. This guy's actually got this sort of Mickey Mouse falsetto shrill thing going on underneath, which is really painful sounding, honestly. I don't know how it is that he did it and for an entire record without killing himself, but he actually did it for 3 or 4. The percussion on it at times is very interesting, whereas a lot of metal is using really technical kind of time signature changes with blast beats and using double kick and triple kick bass drums. This thing, you don't really pick up on that much, but they're putting in these sort of timpani-like tribal drums just being pounded here and there in it, and that is another area where you kind of pick up on a little bit more bottom end in the recording than you do on the rest of it. Again, it's very oddly atmospheric and kind of haunting, and definitely very weird. Generally, I don't listen to recordings like that one so much as things that have a bit more of a fatness to the production and a little bit more going on in the structure of it so far as its complexity. Like, I'm a fan of Dimmu Borgir, which is the same sort of genre, but they actually use symphony and choir, and they do have that double bass, and there's really good engineering on everything top to bottom. So they didn't initially have the complexity that they do now, but they're very progressive on some of the later albums, and it's very interesting material. The next one that turned up is equally macabre, but very different in style. This is Devil Doll, which is the brainchild of a single artist, a brilliant artist who just goes by the name of Mr. Doctor. And there's 2 versions of this album floating around. This one is The Sacrilege of Fatal Arms. There's also a version called Sacrilegium. And if you're a fan of horror movies and horror movie soundtracks, especially really old stuff, then this is something that might appeal to you. It's very heavy in atmosphere and in outrageous ideas, combining a lot of sampling, using stuff from actual scores with instrumentation, including orchestral instruments and performers that are real in the studio. I think the guy's Italian, so it's technically, I guess, falls into Italian prog. It also falls very much, I guess, in the vein of goth, although it does not have a goth pop feel at all. So you can't consider it as being along the lines of Christian Death or Sisters of Mercy or any of that stuff. It's way beyond that in its development, in its form, in its artistry. Just throughout, this thing is incredibly rich. There's Bernard Herrmann music sampled into this effectively, I think, in a couple of spots. There's sound bites from a couple of really famous movies. Hold on, let me just go into the sleeve and you can see some interesting still choices from old movies. You know, the guy actually cut together a collage with handwritten lyric sheets that he uses old movie stills, like from Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And I'm not sure if this is London After Midnight. I think that's Karloff, though. Could be London After Midnight, though, with Cheney Sr., because the hat matches. It's hard to tell because that chin screams Karloff at me. Very old, sort of odd illustrations. We have Nosferatu with Max Schreck up there. I mean, even on the back we have the eerie little albino, I don't know if it's Village of the Damned or Children of the Damned. They're almost the same movie. They were made a year apart. The guy's vocal style is really fascinating. He's actually got an extraordinary voice, and if you go to the album The Girl Who Was Death, he goes into a soprano on that in a spot akin to Klaus Nomi, where it sounds very much like a woman doing an opera soprano, and it's absolutely stellar. A lot of the times he's just in a lower register spoken and doing this sort of sinister sounding thing, sort of mad Renfield sounding thing. The vocal style of it mixes melodics with spoken word. It's a style that's known as Sprechgesang, which is actually something that's been around a long time. It dates back to most of Wagner's works, like The Rings. Was originally to be performed in Sprechgesang, but it wasn't really popular at the time, so it wound up being rearranged over the years for more traditional operatic vocals, and that's the way that it's heard today. An example of a milder version of Sprechgesang would probably be Danny Elfman's performance doing the vocals for Jack Skellington in Nightmare Before Christmas. If you listen to him carefully, he sings about half of the lines and speaks about half of them. And that's the way that this thing is structured together. Much of it isn't even rock and roll. Some of it is. There are elements of punk, of metal, of prog, of orchestra. It's kind of all over the place, and almost like a strung together series of vignettes, ranging anywhere from 30 seconds to 2.5 minutes in length, into a long arrangement of all these little bitty pieces. And it's really brilliant and fascinating. It's one of those records that can actually take you on sort of a musical journey. So I do recommend, if you find any of this guy's stuff, Mr. Doctor under the name Devil Doll. There is more than one artist using the name Devil Doll. The albums that I know of are Dies Irae, Sacrilegium, Sacrilege of Fatal Arms, The Girl Who Was Death, and Heliogabalus. All really, really good, really interesting records with very similar styles to each other. My favorite is The Girl Who Was Death, but the randomizer pulled this one up, so I pulled it out. Next up, and I was discussing this artist with another YouTuber recently, Nectar, Journey to the Center of the Eye. I have this on both CD and this reissue LP. I used to have an original issue LP. The original actually sounded a little better than this one for understandable reasons. I don't think this one is a top quality press, but it is a pretty looking record, but it's passable. It doesn't skip or have any vinyl fail issues. It's just a little more crackly than I had expected, because I get a lot of multicolor vinyls that are fine. This is just not one of them that came out as perfect as some others. Nectar is a really, really nice, I think they're from UK, prog band. They've got a few notable records out there. A lot of people know them more for Recycle and for Remember the Future. This album is earlier than that, and it's a bit more leaning on the psych side. Later on, when they did those other records, they were by then actually working with Larry Fast of Synergy, which gave those records a lot of character. This record's got a lot of character, a lot of use of Hammond organ with echoes and reverbs and experimentation with using studio effects. It's a concept album. The concept is kind of like David Bowie's Space Oddity taken out to a long form. The difference is that the guy gets stranded in space, I guess, because from space he actually witnesses man's destruction of the Earth. There's no Earth for him to go back to at the end of the album. So it's very tragic in that way. And of course there's also the elements of the great eye in space, basically, and becoming one with the all, I guess, is sort of a thematic element to that. The record itself is a red and blue splatter on clear, so it's a pretty cool looking thing. Hold on, I'll let you see that. Yeah, so there's a couple of other Nectar albums that are on these multicolor that I would absolutely love to have. I've got this one, I've got Recycle, and I have a picture disc of Remember the Future, but there's a couple of other ones out there that are really good albums that they've been putting out in multicolor. Next day, and I'm feeling a little bit better, and it looks like I have a little company over here. Hi. This is the last of the 5 random records. It's a picture disc, Denmark press. I cannot say for sure whether or not these things were authorized. There was quite a few of them from this particular manufacturer. Really attractive things. They don't sound bad. Typically they are live recordings. Again, I think they're unofficial. This is a live recording, or a series of live recordings. Mostly hits. You know, so it's got I'm Walking and Jambalaya, and I think it's got I'm Walking, I'm not sure. Actually it doesn't. But Blueberry Hill is of course the #1 thing on there. There's a Ray Charles one out there. There's a couple of Shakin' Stevens ones from this company. There's an Ike and Tina one. There's tons of these things, tons and tons of them, probably hundreds of different ones. And again, I think they're kind of like those interview picture discs that float around from the 1980s. I used to buy these things in bulk and sell them at the flea market off of my table when I was a kid, and I didn't have to charge very much for them then. I think I only paid $3 cash for them, new mint, to have them shipped to me at that time, and would buy them by the dozen and sell them off my table, and usually kept copies for myself. And like I said, I've lost in the past, a ton of these things were lost because I had tons and tons of stuff years ago. But you know, when I see one now, if it's inexpensive, I go ahead and pick it up because I know the live recordings will be good, and they usually have really good artists on them. Like I really love Fats Domino, honestly. Blueberry Hill was probably one of my favorite songs when I was a little kid, actually. So there you go. That is random record number 5, Jambalaya, Fats Domino, and it's just a Denmark pressed picture disc. I'm not sure what the name of the label is. This morning I went out and did a pickup of a bunch of records that were being given away. The lady basically wanted them out of her warehouse, and she didn't have the strength to be able to move them. Said she just wanted them gone, so most of them have already gone to charity. I have gone through them and pulled some stuff, and I'm still going through a few and sifting through to determine that the stuff that I pulled I really want to keep around because I don't want to hoard, really. I will be doing a video on that in just a few days, so there will be a follow-up very, very soon, and I will see you then. Thanks for checking out my videos. Please like and subscribe.